Hello and welcome back to Frogboy X1 Gaming. Today we're going to talk about Xbox and 120 frame per second support that we are constantly getting new games, well not new games, but updated games that are taking advantage of the new hardware. Whereas on the Sony side, we are getting games updated basically just to 60 frames a second. There's no nothing else coming with that unless it's a third party developer. They're definitely putting out some work. Got to give a shout out to Square Enix for updating the Final Fantasy VII remake for the PlayStation 5. That's pretty awesome, and they're not charging me for it, like unlike Spider-Man. They made me pay $20 just to get the new update for that. That was pretty low of Sony to charge me $80 or just over $80 for the PS4 version of that, and then make me pay another $20 on top of that. So I was just going through some Twitter posts and seeing a lot of people bagging on Xbox for games, old games getting upgraded. Like, to me, that sounds ridiculous that people are bagging on that while they are praising Sony for basically doing nothing. Like, nothing. Like, Last of Us 2, a 60 FPS update. That's all we get, really? That's it? No, nothing more than that from a game that won Game of the Frickin' Year. Can't even get a real solid next-gen upgrade with the power of the PlayStation 5. Shouldn't that be able to push 4K, 60 FPS? Give us better lighting, better, what about the ray tracing or the new geometry engine? I think geometry engine is literally a euphemism for checkerboard renderer 2.0. They can checkerboard render better now with the new hardware in the PS5, which is probably just a PS4 Super Pro at this point. I mean, seriously, we're not getting any updates for... we got a 60 FPS update for Ghost of Tsushima. Why couldn't they add some more textures to that, or bump it up to 4K checkerboard rendering, or something, to show us, to take advantage of the PS5 hardware? Because as it's sitting right now, I haven't really seen any earth-shattering PS4 titles that either A, don't run at 4K 30 frames per second. Demon Souls 4K 30 frames per second. Spider-Man Miles Morales 4K 30 frames per second. The remaster of Spider-Man 4K 30 frames per second. You've got Ratchet and Clank going to be dropping in 2 weeks. That's going to be 4K at 30 frames per second. People hyping up 4K 30 frames per second last gen. Weren't they complaining that the Xbox One X was doing 4K 30 frames per second? Oh man, that's not a next gen. That's not an upgrade. 4K 30 frames per second. I've had that for over 4 years now. For almost 4 years now, I've had 4K 30 frames per second with my Xbox One X. And now we are getting to where people are hyping the PlayStation. That's my biggest reason for being disappointed with the performance of the PlayStation 5 so far, because I've had that performance on my Xbox for over 3 years now on my Xbox One X. But now that my Xbox Series X has more power, all those games that were on my Xbox One X are taking advantage of that power, and they are much better because of it. I mean, yeah, I don't get the whole fanboy thing. Like I've been a PlayStation guy since PlayStation 1. Like, I love my PlayStation. I love PlayStation games. I love PlayStation first party. They do make the best looking games on the market, hands down. But to be hyping 4K 30 frames per second after we've already had that on Xbox for over 3 years now, that doesn't make a lick of sense to me. I mean, I don't get it. I really do not understand how it was bad for Xbox to come out with that 3 years ago but now all of a sudden it's great and it's the new standard because Sony does it. Because most of them games that are on PlayStation 4, on PlayStation 5 that are 4K 30 frames per second are using checkerboard rendering too. Oh my freaking gosh, like checkerboard. I mean, I thought the PlayStation was like super powerful, and the geometry engine and all the Sony first party technology that they put into the PlayStation 5 was supposed to blow the Xbox away. True. I mean, honestly, the truth is out there now, you know? I mean, like every time Digital Foundry runs a freaking video right after the game comes out and we see like the performance is a little bit better on the PlayStation 5, but then like a month later it gets patched and then the Xbox version is better. The Sony fanboys are still running with that, oh man, it runs better on PlayStation 5. No, clearly that's not the case. That is not the case that I have experienced so far with my PlayStation 5 and my Xbox Series X. The Xbox Series X is hands down the better value out of these two systems this generation out of the gate. Sony came out and raised the price to $70, and then they give us Returnal, okay? Returnal does not look like a $70 first party Sony exclusive title. That's frustrating. See, that's frustrating to me. When I think of a Sony first party game, I'm thinking, wow, I'm about to be wowed. They're going to blow my socks off with some beautiful visuals. And then they drop Returnal, and I'm like, man, this thing looks blurry, and like the textures are poor. It doesn't look anywhere. The textures, I mean, we have a standard. We have Demon Souls. The textures in the 4K mode on that looks amazing. That looks freaking amazing. But the 30 frames per second is last gen, man. That's a last gen feature. Now we've got Xbox, okay? We've got more 60 FPS and 120 FPS games on the Xbox Series X. Whether those are backward compatible games, or new games going forward, we have that. We have that performance standard that the Xbox Series X has, I'm going to say, cemented itself in. Like, there are more games running at 60 and 120 frames a second on the Xbox Series X than there are on the PlayStation 5. And at higher resolutions on a lot of these games. So to be able to sit and say that the PlayStation 5 is a true next-gen console when the system is dumb. The system is literally freaking dumb compared to the Xbox. The Xbox is a seamless, smooth experience all the way through. Like, it's great, and every update has made it even better. Like, it's great. I could go out and buy a memory card for my Xbox Series X right now, stick it right in there, and I ain't even got to worry about crypto crazies trying to buy up that technology because they can't even use it. It only works on my Xbox. Whereas my PlayStation 5, I can't even use that beta. I can't even put a PCIe 3, 2, or 1 in there and use it to store PlayStation 4 games. Like, it's locked. Like, I cannot put the memory stick in there because it won't even boot the system. It completely locks the system out if you put it in there. How is the PlayStation 5 a freaking next-gen console when it doesn't have any next-gen features that are available 6 months after the machine came out? This is the kind of stuff that makes me, like, irritated with the PlayStation 5. Like, it should not be like this. I've been a PlayStation guy for a long time, and when you look back over the years at how PlayStation has done each generation, it basically started with the PlayStation 3 with that ridiculous price tag and the software not meeting standards, and you know, all the games that they showcased looked nothing like what they did when they came out. But I was still a blind Sony fanboy. I didn't care. You couldn't tell me nothing. I loved my PlayStation, and it was great. I would sit and talk bad about the Xbox, but you know what the truth of the matter is now that I have my Series X and I can play 4 generations of Xbox games, when you go back and you look at some of these Xbox games that have just been system level enhanced to run at 4K, they hold up actually pretty freaking well. You take Ninja Gaiden 2, for instance, or the Ninja Gaiden games that got 4K updates. Oh my gosh, these games are freaking beautiful. You look at like the Gears of War games that have been updated. Oh my freaking gosh, the visuals and the texture packs that they had on these Xbox games, they actually hold up pretty freaking well. in 4K resolution, and you get HDR out of the box. Every Xbox One game that I've played on my Series X runs at 4K, and even those hold up pretty freaking well still. You play Splinter Cell, it looks pretty good. You play I bought Sphinx and the Mummy because that was one of the games that I bought way back when on my PlayStation 2. And I put that in, and I started playing that on the Xbox Series X, and man, this game is in 4K now, and it looks great. I was surprised at just how detailed the characters were on a first generation Xbox. Like, wow. Like, we were spoiled back then, and I was such a Sony fanboy. Like, I'm sitting there playing, Splinter Cell on. Well, no, I did play Splinter Cell on the Xbox, but if you look at the difference between that PlayStation 2 version and the PlayStation and the Xbox version, oh my gosh, dude, it's like night and freaking day. It's like one's playing on a. Yeah, I don't know, man. I love PlayStation, and they have always made like some of the best AAA games, but to be hyping, giving somebody a hard time because they love Xbox over and saying that, like, oh man, these guys are just waiting on. Most gamers play third-party exclusive or third-party games on their consoles, okay? That's where it's at. Some people, I mean, I'm not a big, Xbox first-party fan. Like, I really don't care that much about their exclusives aside from like Forza 7, Forza Horizon. I started, I mean, I do like Gears of War, but not to the same extent that I love like God of War or SOCOM or my PlayStation exclusives. Like I'm not as in love with the Xbox exclusives, but man, where the third party games that I bought last generation on my Xbox One X, because when PS4 Pro and Xbox One X came out, I bought every single game during that holiday when Xbox Series X or Xbox One X came out. I bought everything, 2 copies of everything. I had 2 copies of Wolfenstein 2. I had 2 copies of Assassin's Creed Origins. I had 2 copies of Destiny 2. I bought 2 copies of basically everything that was out at the time. And every single one of those games look and run far better on my Series X than they do on my PlayStation 5. And yes, I have tried them to see. And it's night and day. It does not even compare to what we had with there's no reason to get all hyped up about this PlayStation 5, honestly. Like, with what's come out and what is about to come out that we know about, there's literally no reason to actually own a PlayStation 5 at the moment as much as there is to buy an Xbox Series X. An Xbox Series X and Game Pass is far more valuable than the PlayStation 5 that people are paying thousands of dollars. Like, why? Why? Seriously, why? Do not do that. That is dumb. Wait until you can buy the system at MSRP. Do not spend more money on this PlayStation 5 because you are not going to get the experience that you think you're going to get. If you're coming from a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 4 Pro, I get why you feel happy. Like, I understand. I get it. It makes perfect sense, because if I was coming from my PS4 Pro to the PlayStation 5, I'd be blown away. Like, Resident Evil looks freaking amazing. I would be blown away. But I'm not coming from the PS4 Pro. I'm coming from the Xbox One X to the PS5, which is just a little bit better. Just a little bit better. It's got what, 4... Well, technically it has 9.3 teraflops, okay? Or 9.2 or whatever it is, without using boost mode. And the Xbox was 6. So it's 3 teraflops more computing power. But it does have a newer technology, so it is faster and better, like whatever. But that gap is not as big. If people are saying that gap's not that big, well, you've got Xbox Series X without boost mode. That's exactly the same amount of jump from the PS5 to the Xbox Series X. So it's about the same amount of jump from the like equivalent right now, because developers aren't even using all of this technology really yet. You have the exact same jump from the Xbox One X to the PS5 that you do from the PS5 to the Xbox Series X. Exactly 3 teraflops of performance power. So, if you had an Xbox One X last generation, the PlayStation 5 is not really that much better than what you already had. Especially because you're getting 4K 30 games on the PS5, you were getting mostly 4K 30 games on the Xbox One X, and that it is what it is. This generation, this new generation, you have the capacity. PlayStation does have the capacity to do better, but it's not going to be at a high resolution of 4K. You're looking at 1440p to 1800p at 60 frames a second on the PlayStation 5. I feel like that is doable, and if the developers can, they're going to checkerboard to 4K. So you're going to get checkerboard 4K at 60 frames a second if the developer is competent enough to be able to do that and pull it off. Whereas on the Xbox, you're probably going to get 1800p to 4K native most of the time in 4K. You're going to be able to get that. And as soon as, and native is not really going to be like the whole thing this generation, because as soon as they start using Fidelity FX and DirectML for the Xbox console, that gap is going to widen. It's going to get bigger. It's going to be more insane. PlayStation developers are really good at what they do. They are very good at squeezing, I call it Sony magic, okay? Because they can magically make games look amazing. I mean, you had God of War at 4K checkerboard 30 on the PlayStation 4 Pro, and that looked... That basically carried that system for the generation. Like, it looked pretty freaking good. It was comparable to basically everything that you would have seen on the Xbox One X. They were able to manage that. But God of War is a pretty small game. It's got a pretty small area. So to be able to cram that, it wasn't, yeah. I mean, it definitely looks good, and it's definitely one of my favorite games of last generation for sure. But when we're talking about the differences of these two consoles, I am at a point in my gaming life to where that stuff doesn't really bother me no more. I want higher quality hardware from these consoles, and I want the games to look amazing and to be able to use that hardware in the shortest time possible. I want them to be able to create these experiences closer to the beginning of the generation and be consistent throughout the whole generation. I don't want to see games look like because if you turn on some of the last gen early games on either the PS4 or the Xbox One, like, that age shows because of that mid-gen console refresh. Things are screwed up right now, okay? So everybody just needs to give everybody a little bit of room and, be happy for one another, man. Be happy, if you're a PS5 guy, be happy for the guy that enjoys playing on his Xbox Series X. Share his enthusiasm, he's happy about it. He should be happy about it. He got a damn good system. Xbox guys, if your buddy on PlayStation is having a good time and optimistic about his games, be happy for him, man. He's coming from a PS4 Pro. He is finally getting to experience what you experienced for 3 years. You got to remember that. You got to remember that, Sony's good at magic, but that PlayStation 4 Pro, the user experience wasn't consistent all the way through. Sony first-party games knocked it out of the freaking park. Looked amazing. Third-party games, ooh, man, it was hit and miss with those things. So, be nice to each other. Definitely be nice to each other, because you both have got amazing things to look forward to in this console generation. So there's no reason to hate on each other, especially because, I mean, Sony has been around a little bit longer than Xbox, but Xbox now has the support of Microsoft. So we are going to see a real competition this generation And I don't think Microsoft needs to go out of their way to rush any project. I don't think they need to do that. I think they should be able to take their time and make these games the best they want to make them, because I believe that is definitely going to set a new standard for consoles and gaming going forward. We should be grateful that both of these companies decided to make some pretty powerful hardware with baked-in technology that is going to carry these consoles throughout this generation. I hope we don't have to see mid-gen refreshes, because I want to see what these two beasts are capable of. And with that, if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. I am trying to put out new content every day to try to keep up with the gaming industry and my full-time job and stuff. And I will see you in the next video. I appreciate you watching. Thank you.